Hello, survivors. Thanks for joining us today. Before we begin, if you enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot. Also, tell us in the comments which city you're listening from. It's great to see how far our community reaches. Now, let's start the story. The hum of the laminar flow hood was usually a comforting sound, the white noise backdrop to precise work. Today, it felt like a cage closing in. My name is Alex, and until about 3 hours ago, I was just another molecular biologist clocking hours at Aegis Laboratories, a sprawling, state-of-the-art research facility tucked away in an anonymous industrial park somewhere miles from anything resembling a real town. Now I was trapped. We all were. Locked down tight on the first day, the world decided to end. It started subtly, like background static gradually increasing in volume until it drowned out everything else. Whispers around the coffee machine about weird news reports from the coasts, riots, attacks, people acting feral. Emails from HR about updating emergency contact information. Mandatory refreshers on containment protocols. Then Dr. Elias, our section head, called an impromptu all-hands meeting in Lab Sector Gamma, our little slice of BSL-3 heaven. Elias looked rough, his usually immaculate lab coat rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. "Team," he began, his voice strained. "As you may be aware, there are developing situations externally. Aegis Command has implemented enhanced security protocols as a precaution. For now, it's business as usual, but maintain strict adherence to all safety procedures. Report any irregularities immediately." He tried for a reassuring smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. It looked more like a grimace carved onto a mask. Business as usual lasted another 47 minutes. I was sequencing a new protein variant, watching the familiar peaks rise and fall on the monitor. Lena, my senior colleague and the sharpest, mind in the lab, was meticulously calibrating the electron microscope. Sam and Chloe, 2 junior techs, were prepping samples in the adjacent clean room. Ben, our assigned security officer, a stoic ex-military type who usually spent his shifts reading paperback thrillers at the security console near the airlock, was doing his hourly perimeter check. Then the alarms blared. Not the fire. Alarm. Not the localized containment breach siren we practiced for quarterly. This was different. A deep, guttural klaxon I'd never heard before, accompanied by flashing red emergency lights that bathed the sterile white lab in an infernal glow. Over the intercom, a synthesized voice, devoid of inflection, repeated a single phrase. "Initiating Project Chimera lockdown. All sectors secure in place. This is not a drill. Repeat. Initiating Project Chimera lockdown." Project Chimera? I'd never heard of it. I looked at Lena, whose face had gone pale, her usual analytical calm replaced by wide-eyed confusion. "Chimera? What the hell is that?" Before she could answer, heavy thuds echoed through the corridor outside our lab's main viewport, the sound of reinforced steel doors slamming shut, sealing off our sector. Ben came sprinting back from his patrol, keycard already swiping at the airlock control panel. The inner door hissed open, and he practically fell inside, hitting the button to cycle the outer door shut just as another, heavier slam reverberated from further down the main corridor. "What's going on?" Lena demanded, moving toward the security console. "Ben, report." Ben leaned against the wall, breathing heavily, his hand resting on the holstered sidearm Aegis security carried, but rarely, if ever, drew inside the facility. "Don't know, Dr. Petrova. All external bulkheads just sealed. Tried the comms, dead, security channels, main facility lines, everything." Lena's fingers flew across the console keyboard, trying to access the internal network, the security feeds. "Network access restricted," she muttered, frowning. "Local feeds only, and most of them are offline." She managed to bring up a grainy image from a camera down the main access corridor outside our sector. It showed chaos, papers scattered, an overturned equipment cart, and dark smears on the floor. No people. Then the feed cut to static. "Shit." Ben breathed, drawing his sidearm now. He moved to the main lab viewport, peering through the reinforced polyglass. Nothing moving out there now. Sam and Chloe emerged from the clean room, their eyes wide with fear. "What was that alarm?" Sam asked, his voice trembling slightly. "What's Project Chimera?" "Nobody knows," Lena said sharply, still trying. "Different access codes on the console. And right now, finding out isn't the priority. Security protocols dictate we maintain containment within our sector until the all-clear is given." She looked at Ben. "Are the air filtration and scrubbers still functioning?" Ben checked a secondary panel near the airlock. "Systems green. We're sealed tight. Air recycling is functional. Emergency power is online." He pointed to the heavy steel door leading to the adjacent lab sector, Delta. "But that door didn't seal automatically. Manual override." He moved toward it, intending to secure it. "Wait," Lena stopped him. "Dr. Elias is in Delta sector. He was meeting with the virology team." "Orders are to secure in place, Doctor," Ben stated, his hand on the manual lock wheel. "No movement between sectors during a Chimera event, whatever the hell that is." "Elias might know what's happening," Lena argued. "We need information." A muffled scream echoed from the direction. Delta sector cut off abruptly. We all froze. Ben didn't hesitate anymore. He spun the wheel, the heavy locking bars sliding into place with a definitive thunk. He then moved to our lab's main door, the one leading to the access corridor, and engaged its manual locks as well. We were sealed in. Trapped. Hours passed. The emergency lights stayed on, bathing everything in that constant, unnerving red glow. The main power grid was clearly down, running only essential systems. Our phones had lost signal the moment the lockdown began. The security console remained stubbornly uncooperative, offering only static on external feeds and limited access to local systems. The klaxon had stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence broken only by the hum of the ventilation and the occasional frantic attempts by Lena to bypass the network restrictions. We took inventory. Our lab section had its own bathroom, a small break area with a perpetually malfunctioning coffee maker and a stash of expired protein bars, and enough reagents and sterile water to last weeks if necessary. Survival wasn't the immediate concern. Information was. What was happening outside our sealed metal box? Was it just Aegis, or was the whole city, the whole world, falling apart? Around noon local time, Ben picked up something on a handheld emergency scanner he kept in his locker. Fragmented broadcasts, mostly military frequencies discussing overwhelmed emergency services, quarantine zones being established around major cities, and increasingly frantic calls for backup that went unanswered. He played a snippet for us, the voice tinny and panicked. "Repeat, multiple hostiles exhibiting extreme aggression." Bytes seemed to transmit, "God, they're getting up. They're getting back up after being shot." The implication hung heavy. In the sterile air. Bytes. Getting back up. It sounded insane, like something ripped from the B-movies Ben liked to read. "That's impossible," Lena whispered, but the scientific certainty in her voice had vanished, replaced by a tremor of fear. "Maybe not," Sam said quietly, fiddling with a pipette rack. "Remember Project Lazarus? Elias's pet project? Neural regeneration using retroviral vectors?" Lena shot him a sharp look. "That was theoretical, Sam. Early animal trials showed promise but significant neurological side effects. Aggression, loss of higher function? It was shelved months ago." "Was it?" Sam persisted. "I saw him transferring samples last week, off the official inventory logs to Delta Sector. Delta Sector, where Elias had been meeting with the virology team, where we'd heard the scream. Before anyone could process this, a low banging sound started. Not from the corridor door, not from Delta Sector's locked entrance. It was coming from the ventilation system, a slow, rhythmic thudding echoing through the ducts above us. Ben immediately raised his sidearm, scanning the ceiling. "Vents. Something's in the vents." "Impossible," Lena stated. "The filtration system is BSL-4 rated. Not even microbes get through, let alone something large enough to make that sound." Thud, thud, Thud. It was getting closer, moving through the network of ducts that connected our supposedly isolated sector to the rest of the facility. Chloe whimpered, backing away toward the break room. "Everyone stay calm," Ben ordered, though his own voice was tight. "Could be debris, system malfunction." Thud, thud. A vent cover directly above the main lab bench rattled violently, dust sifting down. We all backed away, weapons. Ben's pistol, my heavy-duty sample wrench, Lena clutching a fire extinguisher, trained on the ceiling. The thudding stopped. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then, with a screech of tortured metal, the vent cover ripped downward, bending as if peeled back by incredible force. Something dark and wet dripped onto the pristine floor tiles below. It wasn't water. It sizzled slightly, leaving a dark stain. Then a hand emerged from the vent, pale, coated in the same dark fluid, fingers impossibly long and thin, twitching spastically. It groped blindly in the air for a moment before retracting. Back into the darkness, the bent vent cover hung precariously, a jagged metal maw leading into the unknown recesses of the facility's guts. No one spoke. The implications were terrifying. The lockdown wasn't absolute. The vents, our air supply, were compromised, and whatever was crawling through them wasn't just debris. It was hunting. The first day of the end of the world, and we were locked inside the box where the horror was born, with the monsters crawling in the walls. The silence after the hand retreated was almost worse than the banging. We stood frozen, staring at the mangled vent cover, the dark, sizzling stain on the floor beneath it slowly spreading. "Okay." Ben finally broke the silence, his voice low and strained. "New perimeter. That vent is a breach point. Sam, Chloe, push that supply cabinet underneath it. Block it off as best you can." They scrambled to obey, shoving the heavy stainless steel cabinet across the floor until it sat directly under the damaged vent. It wouldn't stop anything determined, but it might slow it down, give us warning. "We need to assume they can get in other ways," Lena said, her analytical mind kicking back in, overriding the fear. "Check every seal, every panel." We spent the next hour reinforcing our position. We checked the seals on the main door and the Delta sector door, still holding, though we could hear faint, intermittent scratching sounds from the other side of both. We examined every ventilation grate, every access panel, finding no other obvious breaches, but the sense of violation lingered. The lab, our sterile sanctuary, felt tainted, vulnerable. Lena returned to the security console, trying again to access facility schematics or communication logs. "Still locked out of 90% of the system," she reported, frustration evident in her voice. "But I found something, fragmented security logs from Delta Sector just before the lockdown." She brought up a flickering, corrupted video file on the main screen. The footage was brief, maybe 30 seconds, shot from a ceiling camera in what looked like a standard BSL-3 lab. We saw Dr. Elias arguing heatedly with two other researchers in lab coats. No audio, but their body language was agitated, fearful. Elias was gesturing emphatically toward a sealed containment unit in the background. Inside the unit, barely visible, through the reinforced glass, something moved. A humanoid shape strapped to a table, thrashing weakly. Elias turned away from the others, seemingly toward the camera, his face contorted in what looked like triumph. Then the figure in the containment unit convulsed violently, snapping its restraints. It lunged toward the glass just as the feed cut out, replaced by the Aegis Labs logo. "Project Lazarus," Sam whispered. "Or maybe Project Echo. Reynolds' work from the CDC." There had been rumors, whispers of collaboration between Aegis and the CDC on highly classified projects. "Whatever it was, it got out," Lena stated grimly. "And Elias, he didn't look surprised. He looked like he planned it." I finished her thought. The idea was monstrous, but it fit the few pieces we had. "We can't know that for sure," Ben interjected, ever the pragmatist. "All we know is we're locked in. The facility is compromised, and those things, He gestured vaguely toward the ceiling vent. "Are trying to get in." As if on cue, a faint scratching sound started, this time from the main corridor door. Soft, insistent, like fingernails on steel. We all tensed, weapons ready. "They know we're here," Chloe whimpered, her eyes wide with terror. "Steady," Ben commanded. "They can't get through that door. Reinforced steel, magnetic locks, manual bolts." The scratching stopped. We waited, listening. Then came a heavy thump against the door, followed by another and another. Rhythmic, deliberate. Not the mindless flailing of the infected we assumed were outside, but something calculated. Are they using something as a ram? Diaz asked, peering through the small viewport beside the door. "Can't see who'll wait." He recoiled from the viewport, stumbling back. "Jesus Christ!" "What is it?" Price demanded. "It's Elias," Diaz stammered. "Or what's left of him. He's directing them, pointing, showing them where to hit the door." My blood ran cold. Alpha variants, coordinated attacks. Foster's dying words, Chen's intercepted transmission. It wasn't just mindless hunger anymore. Something was leading them, something intelligent, something that used to be our boss. The impacts on the door grew stronger, the steel beginning to groan under the assault. We exchanged grim looks. The door wouldn't hold forever against a coordinated attack, especially one led by someone who knew the facility's weaknesses. "Anya," Price said urgently. "How's that download?" 90%, she replied, eyes glued to the progress bar. "Just a little more." Crack. A weld near the door's hinge gave way with a sound like a gunshot. The door buckled inward several inches. We could see movement through the gap now, pale hands reaching, grasping. "Time's up," Price yelled. "Everyone to the shaft. Marcus, provide covering fire." I opened fire, aiming for the reaching hands, the distorted faces visible through the widening gap. Diaz, Miller, and Ramirez scrambled for the ventilation shaft. Access boosting Anya up first, the precious hard drive clutched in her hand. "Hurry," I yelled, backing away as the door groaned again, hinges tearing. More infected poured through the breach, Elias among them, his face a horrifying mask of decay and malevolent intelligence. He pointed directly at me and the others surged forward. Price laid down covering fire beside me, dropping several, but we were being overwhelmed. "Go, Marcus," Price ordered, shoving me toward the shaft. "Get that data out." I hesitated for Taiwi, only a second, then turned and leaped, grabbing the lowest rung as Price continued firing, holding them back for precious seconds. Hands clawed at my boots again, cold fingers seeking purchase. Anya and Diaz hauled me up into the darkness just as Price emptied his magazine and slammed the access panel shut, wedging the pipe back in place. Below us, the pounding began almost immediately, heavier this time, angrier. We were trapped in the vertical shaft again, but this time, the thing leading the hunt knew exactly where we were. The climb felt even more desperate this time. Below, the sound of the infected trying to force the access panel was a constant, terrifying reminder of how little time we had. Above, the rooftop exit seemed impossibly far. Miller was near panic, his movements jerky and unsure. Ramirez climbed with grim determination, while Diaz offered encouragement from below Price, who led the ascent. Anya stayed close behind me, guarding the hard drive that contained our only hope and the proof of Aegis's horrifying secrets. "Almost there," Price called down, his voice echoing in the narrow shaft. "I see the hatch." Hope surged, only to be dashed moments later. "It's jammed," Price grunted after several attempts to push it open. "Something's blocking it from the outside." "Let me try," Diaz said, pushing past Miller. He braced himself and slammed his shoulder against the hatch. Metal screeched but didn't give. "Solid, feels like equipment, maybe debris from the upper levels collapsing." We were trapped, sealed in from below by the infected, led by the thing that was Elias, blocked from above by debris. The air in the shaft felt thick, stagnant. Panic began to set in. Miller started hyperventilating. "Everyone calm down," Price ordered, his voice tight but controlled. "Think, there has to be another way." "Anya, check the drive. Any facility schematics included in Reynolds's files." Anya quickly connected the ruggedized drive to a small tablet she carried. The screen illuminated her face, showing lines of code scrolling past. "Searching. Yes, found them. Backup emergency schematics, deep-level access." She zoomed in on a section of the diagram. "There's a sub-level maintenance tunnel, connects directly below the core lab. Runs parallel to this shaft about 20 feet down." "Can we breach the shaft wall?" Price asked Diaz. Diaz examined the shaft's construction. "It's reinforced concrete, but there are maintenance access plates every 10 meters. If we can get one open..." "Do it," Price ordered. "Marcus, Miller, cover below. Ramirez, Anya, help Diaz." We descended carefully to the nearest access plate, about 15 feet below the jammed roof hatch. The pounding from the lab-level access panel below us seemed to be getting louder, more frantic. They hadn't given up. Diaz used his hydraulic spreader again, working it into the seam of the heavy steel plate. Metal groaned under the pressure. "It's working," Diaz grunted, straining. "Almost." With a final pop, the plate sprang outward, revealing a dark, narrow opening beyond. A gust of foul air rushed out, carrying the scent of stagnant water and decay. "Sub-level maintenance tunnel M-Gamma-7, Anya confirmed, checking the tablet. "According to this, it should lead toward the old geothermal access point on the facility's west perimeter." "West perimeter?" Price frowned. "That's miles from where Jenkins is waiting with the Humvee." "No sign of Jenkins or Chen on comms since we entered the hospital, sir," I reminded him. "Assuming they're still waiting is optimistic." "Thiko, geothermal access point might be our only way out," Anya added. "It bypasses the main facility lockdown protocols, designed as a last resort emergency egress." The pounding below us intensified, accompanied by the screech of tearing metal. They were breaking through the lower access panel. "No more time," Price decided. "Through the tunnel. Move." Diaz went first, securing the narrow opening. Ramirez followed, then Miller, who nearly slipped in his panic. I helped Anya through, ensuring the hard drive was secure, then followed myself, Price bringing up the rear. He managed to pull the access plate partly closed behind us, but it wouldn't seal. The maintenance tunnel was even worse than the ventilation shaft. Barely wide enough to walk single file, pipes dripping slime, the floor slick with decades of accumulated filth. Our flashlight beams cut through oppressive darkness, revealing scurrying shapes, rats, insects, and maybe worse. The air was thick, almost unbreathable. We moved as quickly as we could, Anya guiding us with the schematic on her tablet. "Left junction ahead," she called out, "then straight for about 500 meters. Behind us, we heard the access plate being torn open, followed by the unmistakable sounds of the infected entering the tunnel system. Those wet gurgles, the shuffling, scraping gait. They were following us. We pushed harder, splashing through, ankle-deep water in some sections, scrambling over collapsed pipes in others. Miller stumbled frequently, his nerves frayed. Diaz and Ramirez stayed focused, covering our rear, occasionally firing single shots when the sounds of pursuit grew too close. "Right junction," Anya directed after what felt like an hour of navigating. The suffocating darkness. Schematic shows this leads directly to the geothermal vent access. The tunnel began to slope downward, the air growing warmer, thick with the smell of sulfur and damp earth. We could hear a low rumbling sound ahead, like distant machinery. "That's the geothermal plant," Price said. "We're close." The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, a cavernous space filled with massive pipes, turbines, and control panels, all coated in dust and rust. This must have been the original power source for Aegis before they switched to the main grid. Now likely abandoned but still connected to the surface via the emergency egress shaft. The access ladder should be over there. Anya pointed toward a platform on the far side of the chamber. As we crossed the grated metal floor, a section ahead of us collapsed with a deafening crash, plunging into darkness below. A chasm, at least 20 feet wide, now separated us from the escape ladder. They knew, Diaz breathed, staring into the abyss. They anticipated us. Before we could react, shapes emerged from the tunnels behind us. The infected, led by the thing that had been Elias. But they weren't alone. Flanking Elias were two new figures, larger than the standard infected, moving with a predatory grace that was chillingly different. Their skin was the same dead gray, but their eyes glowed with a malevolent intelligence, and their bodies seemed enhanced. Musculature subtly wrong, joints bending at unnatural angles. Alpha variants. One of the alphas let out a shriek, A's high-pitched sound that seemed to command the others. The regular infected surged forward, shambling toward the edge of the chasm, seemingly ready to throw themselves across. The alphas held back, watching, calculating. They're trying to bridge the gap with bodies, Price realized. We have to stop them. We opened fire, focusing on the shambling infected first, trying to thin their numbers before they could create a bridge of corpses. But the alphas reacted. One pointed, and several infected broke off, scrambling up the pipes and gantries along the chamber walls, trying to flank us. Miller, Ramirez, hold the chasm, Price ordered. Diaz, Marcus, Anya, with me. We take out those alphas. We split. Our fire, Miller and Ramirez pouring rounds into the shuffling mass at the chasm edge, while Price, Diaz, Anya, and I focused on the flanking infected and the two intelligent alphas. Anya, surprisingly adept with her sidearm, dropped two flankers, climbing the pipes. Diaz and Price focused on the alphas, their coordinated fire forcing the intelligent infected to take cover behind machinery. I targeted the flankers trying to cross a narrow pipe bridge above us. My rounds sent two plummeting into the darkness. Below, but a third made it across, dropping down behind our position. I spun, bringing my rifle up just as it lunged. Its eyes burned with that cold intelligence. This wasn't mindless hunger. This was tactical assault. We went down together, wrestling on the slick metal floor. Its teeth snapped inches from my face, its unnatural strength pinning me. I managed to get my combat knife free, plunging it into the alpha's eye socket. It shrieked, releasing its grip for a split second. Enough time for me to roll away and put a round into its brainstem. "Status!" Price yelled, dropping the second alpha as it tried to rush him. "Chasm clear for now," Miller reported, breathing heavily. "But we're almost out of ammo." "The controls," Anya shouted, pointing to a panel near the escape ladder platform. "Geothermal release." "We can vent the steam, create cover." It was risky. Venting high-pressure geothermal steam into the chamber could cook us alive if we weren't careful, but it might be our only chance. "Diaz, cover me!" Price yelled, sprinting toward the chasm edge. He took a running leap, clearing the 20-foot gap and landing hard on the other side. He scrambled toward the control panel as the thing that was Elias directed more infected to swarm the chasm. "Anya, Marcus, Miller, Ramirez," Price called back, reaching the panel. "Get ready to cross, I'll give you cover." He slammed his hand down on a large red button. Alarms blared, louder than before. Steam began to hiss from vents around the chamber, quickly thickening into opaque white clouds. "Now!" Price roared over the noise. One by one, we leaped the chasm, landing beside Price as steam filled the chamber, obscuring the infected, muffling their snarls. "The ladder," Anya pointed. We scrambled up the rusty rungs, climbing toward a faint circle of starlight far above. Behind us, the geothermal chamber filled with scalding steam and the sounds of dying infected. We didn't know if Elias or any alphas survived the blast, but we couldn't wait to find out. We emerged onto the surface miles from the main Aegis complex, coughing in the cool night air. The geothermal vent access point was disguised as a small, concrete utility shed. Below us, the lights of Port Sterling flickered like dying embers against a backdrop of burning buildings. The sounds of the city were fainter here, but the scale of the disaster was horrifyingly clear. "We made it," Miller breathed, collapsing against the shed wall. "For now," Price corrected, checking his comms unit again. Still dead. He looked. At the hard drive Anya still clutched. That data is everything. Fort Hadley is over 100 miles west. We need transport. As if in answer, headlights appeared on the service road leading away from the geothermal plant. A single, beat-up pickup truck bounced toward us. Hope surged, until we saw the figure behind the wheel. One of the Aegis security guards, face pale, eyes vacant. He wasn't alone. In the truck bed, 2 more infected figures stirred. They knew, Anya whispered. They knew about this exit. The Alphas hadn't just been trying to stop us. They'd been herding us toward this prearranged ambush. The truck skidded to a halt 20 yards away, its headlights pinning us like trapped animals. The infected began to climb out, moving with that terrifying, coordinated purpose. We raised our weapons, 5 survivors against the tide, our backs to the dying city, the hard drive containing the world's potential salvation feeling impossibly heavy. The first day was over, the long night had just begun.